As I stood at the sink, scrubbing dishes, my husband Eric suddenly dropped a bombshell. Sophia, I want a divorce. My hands froze, submerged in soapy water. But why? I stammered, completely blindsided by his blunt statement. I'm about to inherit $6 million, he continued, as if we were discussing the weather. That's a lot of money, and I don't want to share it with you. I stared at him, trying to absorb his words. What does that have to do with the divorce? Eric sighed, leaning against the counter. The truth is, I've only stayed with you for the money. Your salary isn't much, but it helped pay some bills. Once I get that inheritance, I won't need you anymore. I want to live stress-free, and that means being alone. So let's just end this. His words hit me like a ton of bricks, but in that moment, I realized this was my chance to break free from the exhausting life I'd been leading. Fine, I replied, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. If you're coming into that much money, sell the house. It'll pay off the mortgage and we can both move on. Eric looked taken aback by my calm acceptance. Maybe he expected a fight or tears, but I wasn't going to give him that satisfaction. Instead, I walked into the living room, grabbed some papers, and slammed them onto the table. This was my moment to say goodbye to the man who had drained me emotionally for far too long. My name is Sophia. I'm a preschool teacher who adores kids, and I met Eric through a mutual friend. He's 2 years older than me, and for the first few years, we were happy. We bought a house, talked about having children, and for a while, it felt like life was headed in the right direction. But everything changed after we got married. Eric's personality took a sharp turn. He became obsessed with money, and that obsession clouded every conversation. Before we tied the knot, he used to admire my job, praising the work I did, but those compliments quickly faded. All you do is play with kids all day, Sophia, he would sneer, his voice dripping with disdain. I'm out here busting my butt while you have it easy. His hurtful comments became routine, and he started calling me a freeloader despite my efforts and dedication as a daycare teacher. Every child is unique, and the responsibility for their safety and well-being is immense. But Eric never saw it that way. No matter how I tried to explain, he refused to understand, and his words cut deeply. We had been married for 8 years, and the reason we didn't have children was because of him. If you've got time to think about babies, he'd say, you should be working more. Don't even think about quitting your job just because you want a child. We have bills to pay, Sophia. Every time I brought up the idea of starting a family, Eric would shut me down so harshly that I eventually stopped mentioning it altogether. Sure, he made more money than I did, but the difference wasn't significant. Still, he acted as if he were leagues above me, as if I contributed nothing to our life together. I took pride in my work, but his constant belittling was devastating. His cruel words cut deep, and too often, I found myself crying alone after he went to bed. Recently, Eric had been talking more about wanting to be alone. I could easily live on my own, he'd say. I'm only sticking around because it's convenient for now. I couldn't grasp why he always looked down on me. It didn't make sense. Even though he was putting in more overtime, I knew it wasn't translating into more income. I kept a close eye on our finances, and his salary remained stagnant. Maybe if he worked harder, I wouldn't have to pick up the slack, he'd snap at me. You should be grateful for what I do. But I wasn't buying it. The numbers didn't lie. When I pointed this out, he would fly into a rage. Do you know who's keeping this lifestyle afloat? I could leave you anytime, Sophia. Don't forget that. His words felt like a threat, and the tension between us grew thicker with each passing day. He hadn't been like this before we got married, and I found myself wondering how things had gotten so bad. The final straw came during a visit to his parents for Thanksgiving. His mother, with her usual warmth, offered us tea and asked, "It's been 8 years since you two got married, right? Sophia, you used to say you wanted kids. Have you thought about it? You're not getting any younger." I was just about to speak when Eric cut in. "Mom, we've already decided we're not having kids." I froze, stunned by his words. That wasn't true at all. "What?" I whispered. "Yeah," Eric continued, ignoring my confusion. "Sophia hates the idea of taking care of kids. She gets enough of that at work." Before I could correct him, his mom nodded and said, "Well, if that's what you've both decided, then that's fine." In the car on the way home, I confronted him. "Why would you lie like that? I've always wanted children." He shrugged. "We can't afford it, Sophia. You don't make enough money, so you don't get a say." I sat in silence, completely crushed. At work, even the children sensed something was off. One little girl in my class, Emma, came up to me and asked, "Miss Sophia, why do you look sad today?" "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to worry you." "I'm fine," I said, giving Emma a gentle pat on the head. Emma was always quiet and thoughtful, mature beyond her years. She wasn't one to seek attention, but her kindness always shone through. "You're not fine, Miss Sophia," Emma said softly, her eyes filled with concern. You're usually much happier. I don't like seeing you sad, Emma said, concern etching her young features. I felt a wave of guilt wash over me that a child as sweet as Emma was worried about my troubles. I forced a smile, not wanting her to bear my burdens. It's very kind of you to care, Emma, but really I'm okay. Emma wasn't convinced. Maybe my daddy can help you. He's a superhero, he helps a lot of people. He's picking me up tomorrow, and I'll tell him about your problem. Despite the heaviness in my heart, Emma's enthusiasm made me chuckle. Her father didn't usually pick her up. Her mother did most days, but Emma mentioned that her dad was coming because her mom was busy and she was determined to introduce us. I felt uneasy about sharing my personal issues with a stranger, but I couldn't refuse her excitement. The next day arrived, and sure enough, Emma's father showed up to pick her up. He was polite and well-spoken, just as I remembered from the school's entrance ceremony. "Thank you for taking care of Emma," he said with a warm smile. "She talks about you all the time and seems to really enjoy her time here." "Oh, it's my pleasure. Emma is such a sweet, thoughtful girl," I replied, feeling a little awkward given the circumstances. I didn't feel comfortable discussing my problems with him, even though Emma had insisted. My situation wasn't something that could be casually mentioned. But Emma was persistent. "Daddy, Miss Sophia is worried about something. Can you help her?" Her father glanced at me, sensing my hesitation. "I understand if you're not ready to talk about it," he said gently. "But if you ever need help, don't hesitate to reach out. My daughter is very concerned, and we'd love to assist in any way we can." He handed me a business card. As I glanced at it and noticed his title, something shifted inside me. Maybe it was fate, or maybe I had just reached my breaking point, but I decided then and there that I wouldn't be a victim any longer. I was going to take control of my life, and I would make Eric regret ever treating me this way. Just as I was making plans to move forward, Eric approached me again, casually tossing another curveball into my day. "Hey, how about we finally go through with that divorce?" he said nonchalantly, as if we were simply discussing what to have for dinner. It had been a long time since we sat down for a meal together, and hearing him bring this up now, especially in the middle of dinner, was jarring. My hands froze in the soapy water as I turned to face him, unsure of what to say. Eric seemed to interpret my silence as shock, grinning smugly as if he held all the power. "I know you don't like it, but my mind's made up," Eric said, his tone dismissive. "Why now?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "A huge sum of money is coming my way. Want to know how much?" $6 million, he boasted, clearly relishing the moment. I hadn't asked for the details, but he continued. "I only stayed with you for the money. Yours wasn't much, but it was something. Now that I have this money, I don't need you anymore. Let's end this. You've had your time freeloading off me." Fury bubbled beneath the surface, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Where did you get all that money?" I asked, even though there were a million other things I wanted to say. "That's none of your business. We're strangers now," Eric replied dismissively. "Fine," I said, my resolve hardening. "Let's get the divorce over with then." He looked surprised by how quickly I agreed, perhaps expecting more resistance, but I was ready to be rid of him. "I don't plan on living in this small house anymore," he continued arrogantly. "With $6 million, I'm buying a mansion. I'll sell the house too." "That's fine," I said, meeting his gaze. "I'll find a place to live, and you can use the money to pay off the mortgage." "Yeah, I'll take care of it, I guess. It's the least I can do." His smugness was unbearable, and I decided it was time to put my plan into action. I busied myself with packing, preparing for this new chapter in my life. When the divorce proceedings were nearly finalized, I arranged a meeting with Eric to discuss the final details. "I'm leaving the mortgage payments to you," I said, sliding a document across the table. "I don't want any confusion later. So I've drafted an agreement that outlines everything. Please sign it." Eric flipped through the papers but suddenly paused. "Wait a minute. What's this about alimony? Why should I pay you anything? If anything, you should be paying me. You don't even work full-time." I stayed calm, laying out more documents in front of him. "You thought you could hide everything from me, didn't you? You've been so naive, Eric." His face turned pale as he glanced at the photos I placed in front of him, images of him with another woman, laughing together, arm in arm. "She's just a junior collie," he stammered. "This doesn't mean anything." "Really?" I asked, holding up another photo that showed Eric and the same woman entering a hotel together. His eyes widened in panic, but he wasn't ready to give in. "These are fake photos. They can be manipulated these days. You can't fool me with this." I sighed deeply, having anticipated his reaction. "This isn't just about pictures, Eric. I have more evidence than you can imagine," I said calmly. "You're not walking away from this easily." Eric's confidence began to falter as I revealed the extent of what I had gathered against him. This was just the beginning. My quiet strength would soon become his downfall. I think they'll be here soon, I added just as the doorbell rang. Eric's face strained of color, confusion, and worry flickering in his eyes. He had no idea what was about to unfold. I opened the door and stepped aside, ushering in two people. "This is my attorney," I announced, guiding them into the living room. "These photos and documents were collected by a private detective agency. There's no way they could be fake. If you're unsure, should I call them right now?" I spoke with such calmness that it rattled him. "Pleasure to meet you. I'm Sophia's attorney," my lawyer chimed in, flashing a confident smile. "From now on, we'll handle all divorce proceedings through me. Do you have any questions about these photos? I'd be happy to explain everything." Eric, who had been projecting bravado, began to panic. The truth was out. His claims of working late and putting in overtime had been lies. The detective agency had revealed that he was leaving work on time, sneaking away to spend his nights with his mistress. Suddenly, everything made sense. When he had started talking about wanting to be alone, it hadn't just been his usual selfishness. It was a ploy to spend more time with her. Now that his affair was in the open, he had nowhere to hide. Emma's father had been right to step in to help me. I hadn't realized then how much influence he wielded. He wasn't just a supportive parent but the CEO of a major company with connections to top-tier lawyers and detectives. His daughter's claim that her dad was a superhero was spot on. He had assembled a team that exposed all of Eric's lies. Eric attempted to regain his composure. "You want alimony? Fine. I've got $6 million. I can afford it. Just get out of here. I never want to see you again." I stayed calm, methodically packing my things, ready to move on to the next chapter of my life. "I would have left regardless, Eric. If there's anything else in the future, we'll handle it through the lawyer. Don't come to me directly. Who would ever want to see you again?" He spat, his pride still intact, but I could see the flicker of fear in his eyes. He hadn't expected me to be so prepared. Silently, I gathered the last of my belongings and walked out of the house that had once felt like home. As I stepped outside, I wondered how someone could remain so arrogant even at the end. Eric had no idea how close he was to losing everything. For the next few months, I settled into my new life in a quiet apartment where I could finally breathe without the constant tension. The adjustment wasn't easy, but with Eric gone, the stress that had loomed over me like a dark cloud dissipated. The relief was undeniable. Just as I began to embrace the peace, Eric showed up at my door, pounding loudly enough for the neighbors to hear. "Please, Sophia, you've got to listen to me," he yelled. Reluctantly, I opened the door to see his disheveled figure standing there. "What do you want?" I asked coldly, making it clear I had no interest in his excuses. He forced a smile, glancing around my apartment. "You've got a nice place here. There's plenty of room for two. Maybe I could move in? We could make one of these rooms mine." I stared at him, disbelief etched on my face. "Are you serious? There's no way I'm living with a stranger." "Come on, Sophia, don't be so harsh. We were married once, remember? There's no reason we can't be together again," he said, his voice dripping with false charm. "We're strangers now, Eric, legally, so stop acting like we're still something." "Don't talk like that, Sophia. You're scaring me," he said, his voice wavering. "I've realized that I need you in my life. We can start over. You were happy with me, right?" I scoffed. "You were living in a mansion with your mistress, Eric. I was nothing but a convenience to you. Why would I take you back?" To my shock, his face twisted, and he began to cry. "Sophia, I never actually had $6 million, he sobbed. "I thought I won the lottery, but I was wrong. I misread the numbers. I jumped to conclusions, thinking I could leave you, but it was all a mistake." I stood there, stunned. "What are you even talking about?" "I quit my job," he wailed, desperation fully on display. "I thought I won, so I badmouthed my boss and quit. But the numbers were wrong, Sophia. I'm ruined. I thought I could do whatever I wanted with that money, but now I have nothing." I stared at him, utterly speechless. This was the man I once thought I'd spend my life with. Blinded by greed and arrogance, he had thrown everything away without a second thought. "I ended things with her," Eric continued, as if that would change anything. "I realized I need you, Sophia. Please let's start over. I know you still love me deep down." I couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. "Eric, I don't know what world you're living in, but it's not this one. I'm done with you. You made your choices, and now you have to live with them." "Please," he begged, tears streaming down his face. "Help me. I'm broke and I need you. I can't go back to my job, and without money, I have nothing." His words meant nothing to me. There was no sympathy left in my heart for him. He had dug his own grave and was now trying to pull me back into the mess he had created. "You should have thought about that before you treated me like dirt," I said, my voice steady. "This conversation is over. Leave." As I watched Eric stumble out of my apartment, I felt a profound sense of closure. This was the final chapter of our story, and for the first time, I felt free. I don't have any money, and she stopped contacting me, Eric muttered, his voice filled with defeat. It seemed his mistress had abandoned him, and I wasn't surprised. Who would want a man who was divorced, jobless, and now homeless? That's why I can't pay my loan, he continued, desperation creeping into his tone. I don't have anywhere to live, Sophia. You're my only hope. I remained calm, though inside I was boiling with frustration. I told you I don't care. If you stay here any longer, I'll take action. Don't forget the agreement you signed when we divorced. If you break your promise, I can claim 5 times the alimony. Eric's face twisted in anger as he raised his hand. For a split second, I thought he might actually hit me. Is that what you're going to do now? I asked. If you lay a hand on me, I'll call the cops immediately. You'll be charged with assault, and this apartment complex has security cameras. Even if you run, they'll catch your face. His expression turned pale, and he lowered his hand, knowing he couldn't win this one. Get out now, or I'll report you for trespassing, I added, my voice steady and firm. At the mention of a report, Eric's panic grew. Without another word, he fled, and I heard him tumble down the stairs. I didn't even bother to check. I simply shut the door and locked it behind me, finally closing that chapter of my life for good. Since that day, Eric never returned. Later, my in-laws came to apologize, genuinely shocked by the situation and clearly unaware of how far their son had fallen. When I asked how Eric was doing, they explained that he had fractured his leg while fleeing that day and had been hospitalized for 2 months. The medical bills added up quickly, and with his mortgage and alimony payments hanging over him, Eric found himself in a tough spot. He tried begging his former boss to take him back and let him work from home, but it was too late. He had burned that bridge when he quit so rudely, and his old employer had no interest in rehiring him. In the meantime, Eric's parents had to step in to cover his alimony payments and mortgage. It was clear he had a difficult road ahead, but he had no one to blame but himself. Once my life had settled down, I decided to visit Emma's house. Her father had been instrumental in helping me turn my situation around, and I wanted to thank him personally. When I told him everything had been resolved, he smiled warmly. I'm glad to hear that, Sophia. I've always wanted to meet you in person since Emma talks about you all the time. I didn't expect it to be under these circumstances, though. All I did was make a few calls, he added humbly. I'm just happy everything worked out. Emma, standing nearby, beamed up at me. I'm so happy to see Miss Sophia smiling again. Her innocent kindness was truly heartwarming. In many ways, Emma had been the catalyst for this entire journey. Without her, I might never have met her father and might still be stuck in that toxic relationship. I was overwhelmed with gratitude. As I stood there reflecting on everything that had happened, I realized how my job as a preschool teacher had shaped my strength to reclaim my life. My husband had looked down on me for my profession, but it was because of it, and the people I met along the way, that I had found my strength. Now I loved my job more than ever. It wasn't just a job, it was part of who I was. Because of it, I felt stronger, more confident, and more determined to keep doing my best, for myself and for the children like Emma who looked up to me. The future felt bright again, and I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I was ready for them.
The Harrison Building towered over downtown Chicago, its steel and glass facade reflecting the morning sun. I sat in my private car across the street, watching board members of Harrison Industries file into the lobby, each one dressed in expensive suits, carrying leather briefcases, radiating the self-importance that came with serving on my family's board. My father would be arriving last, of course. Michael Harrison always had to make an entrance. "Are you ready for this, Ms. Harrison?" my driver asked, catching my eye in the rearview mirror. I smiled, smoothing my Chanel suit. "I've been ready for this moment for 8 years, James. 8 years since my father had stood in his mahogany-paneled office and declared me unworthy of the family legacy. 8 years of careful planning, silent acquisitions, and patient waiting. Today it would all pay off." The memory of that day still burned clear as crystal. I'd been 24, armed with an MBA from Stanford and ideas about modernizing Harrison Industries for the digital age. "The company needs to adapt," I'd argued, spreading market research across his desk. "We're losing market share to more innovative competitors if we don't embrace new technology." Enough. My father's hand had slammed down, scattering my carefully prepared presentations. "Harrison Industries has thrived for 3 generations doing things the traditional way. We don't need your Silicon Valley nonsense." My brother Marcus had smirked from his position by the window. At 28, he was already being groomed as the next CEO, despite having none of my qualifications or vision. "Face it, Emma," he drawled. "You're not cut out for this business. Why don't you go start a blog or something?" Leave the real work to people who understand it. I'd stood my ground, hands trembling but voice steady. The market is changing, if we don't change with it. I said enough. My father's face had turned that dangerous shade of red that always preceded his worst outbursts. You want to change things? You want to modernize? Fine. Buy your own company, because you'll never have a say in this one. The next day, my office had been cleared out. My board position, granted as a courtesy to the CEO's daughter, was revoked. My access to company files terminated. They thought they were ending my story. Instead, they were starting it. I took the elevator to my private office in a neighboring building. Not Harrison Industries' outdated headquarters, but a modern space filled with cutting-edge technology, the kind my father had dismissed as unnecessary. Morning, Ms. Blake, my assistant greeted me, using the name I'd adopted to hide my identity these past 8 years. The final share transfers were confirmed overnight. You now own 52% of Harrison Industries' voting stock. I nodded, scanning the documents she handed me. 8 years of careful moves, buying shares through shell companies, working through intermediaries. My father and brother had been so busy protecting the company from obvious threats, they never noticed the quiet accumulation of power happening right under their noses. Has the board been notified of the emergency meeting? Yes, ma'am. They're gathering now. Your father is quite agitated about not knowing the buyer's identity. I allowed myself a small smile. I imagine he is. My phone buzzed. Marcus calling. I let it go to voicemail, already knowing what he'd say. The same thing he'd been saying since the mysterious share acquisitions began. That he'd find who was behind it. That no one could take Harrison Industries from the Harrison family. He had no idea his own sister had already done exactly that. I checked my appearance one last time in the reflection of my office window. Gone was the eager young woman with dreams of modernizing her family's company. In her place stood someone harder, someone who learned that sometimes you have to break something completely to rebuild it properly. The car's waiting, my assistant announced. Are you ready to face them? I picked up my briefcase, containing documents that would remake Harrison Industries from the ground up. I've been ready for 8 years. The drive to Harrison Industries took exactly 6 minutes. In that time, I thought about everything that had led to this moment. The nights spent studying market patterns while my father and brother attended charity galas. The careful cultivation of allies in the business world who never knew my real identity. The fortune I built independently just so I could finally take back what should have been mine by right. My father had told me to buy my own company if I wanted to make changes. So I had. I just decided to buy his. As my car pulled up to the Harrison building, I saw my father's signature Mercedes already parked in his reserved spot. The CEO's spot. I smiled, knowing it wouldn't be his for much longer. The security guard nodded to me as I crossed the lobby. He didn't recognize the CEO's banished daughter in the confident woman striding past him. The elevator ride to the top floor gave me one last moment of reflection. I thought about the day after I'd been thrown out, when I'd sat in a small coffee shop planning my revenge. I could have exposed the company's weaknesses to competitors, could have gone to the press with insider knowledge of questionable practices, could have done any number of things to hurt them quickly. Instead, I'd chosen patience. I'd built my own technology company specialized in exactly the kinds of innovation Harrison Industries needed. I'd made it successful enough to fund my gradual acquisition of my family's company. And I'd done it all under a different name, becoming the kind of anonymous investor that my father feared most. The elevator doors opened onto the executive floor. Through the glass walls of the boardroom, I could see them all assembled. The old guard of Harrison Industries, with my father at the head of the table and Marcus at his right hand. My heels clicked against the marble floor as I approached the boardroom. 8 years of waiting. 8 years of planning. 8 years of letting them think they'd won. Time to show them how wrong they've been. I pushed open the boardroom doors exactly at 9 o'clock. The conversation inside died instantly, all eyes turning to the unknown woman entering their sacred space. My father's face darkened with annoyance. He hated when anyone interrupted his meetings. Excuse me, Marcus called out, but this is a private board meeting. Oh, I know exactly what this is, I replied smoothly, walking to the head of the table. Emergency session called to discuss the recent acquisition of controlling shares in Harrison Industries by Blake Technologies. I set my briefcase down, enjoying their confused expressions. I'm here to represent the buyer. My father stood up, his face reddening. Now see here. We don't know who your employer thinks they are, but Harrison Industries is a family company. I corrected, finally allowing myself to smile. Harrison Industries was a family company. Now it belongs to me. The room fell silent. Then Marcus laughed, sharp and dismissive. You? And who exactly are you? I turned to face them fully, watching as recognition slowly dawned in their eyes. Don't you recognize me, big brother? 8 years is a long time, but surely you remember the sister you helped throw away. Emma? My father's voice cracked. He fell back into his chair, face draining of color. This is impossible. Impossible? I raised an eyebrow. Like modernizing the company was impossible? Like competing in the digital age was impossible? I opened my briefcase, pulling out documents. I believe you told me to buy my own company if I wanted to make changes. So I did. I just decided to buy yours instead. Marcus lunged for the papers, scanning them with increasingly frantic eyes. These acquisitions. Blake Technologies. You're Catherine Blake. The same. I enjoyed watching him process this information. The tech entrepreneur you've been dismissing as an upstart threat for the past 5 years? That was me. The innovative competitor stealing your market share. Also me. My father found his voice again. You can't do this. The board won't allow. The board doesn't have a choice. I cut him off. I own 52% of voting shares, acquired legally through various shell companies while you were too busy protecting yourself from obvious threats to notice the quiet ones. I nodded to my assistant, who began distributing folders to each board member. Inside you'll find my plans for restructuring Harrison Industries. The company will be merged with Blake Technologies, bringing it into the modern era you fought so hard to avoid. You destroy your own family's legacy, my father demanded. No, father. I'm saving it. Your outdated methods were destroying it just fine without my help. I turned to address the board. Harrison Industries has lost 40% of its market share in the past 5 years. Your technology is obsolete, your methods antiquated. Half your major clients have already quietly switched to firms using Blake Technologies systems. The board members shuffled uncomfortably, unable to deny the truth of my words. They'd watched our company's slow decline, too afraid of my father to speak up. This is revenge, Marcus spat. You're just bitter about being passed over. Revenge? I laughed. Brother, if I wanted revenge, I would have sold our trade secrets to competitors. I would have exposed the questionable accounting practices you thought no one knew about. This isn't revenge, it's resurrection. I'm going to drag this company into the future, whether you like it or not. I stood at the head of the table, my father's position for so many years. As of this moment, I am the new CEO of Harrison Industries. Father, your retirement will be announced this afternoon. Marcus, your position as CFO is terminated, effective immediately. My father surged to his feet. You can't? I can, and I have. I met his eyes steadily. You told me I'd never be worthy of this company. Now I own it outright. Funny how life works out, isn't it? The next hour was a blur of legal documents, formal votes, and shell-shocked expressions. One by one, the board members signed off on my takeover, many of them hiding smiles. They'd seen this coming, even if my father hadn't. As the room cleared out, I remained at the table with my father and brother. The 3 Harrisons together for the first time in 8 years. How different the power dynamic was now. Why? My father finally asked, his voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. Why go to all this trouble? Why not just start your own company? I did start my own company, I reminded him. Blake Technologies is worth 3 times what Harrison Industries is. But this company, I looked around the boardroom, at the portraits of Harrison men on the walls. This company should have been my legacy too. You just couldn't see past your own outdated beliefs to recognize that. Marcus stood up, straightening his tie with trembling hands. So that's it? We're just out? You're out, I confirmed. But unlike you, I believe in merit over birthright. If you want to earn your way back in, you can apply for a junior position like anyone else. Start from the bottom, prove your worth. That's what I had to do. I watched them leave, my father stooped with defeat, Marcus practically running from the room. 8 years of watching them drive our family's company toward obsolescence, and finally I could stop them. My assistant entered with a glass of champagne. Congratulations, Ms. Harrison. Or should I still call you Ms. Blake? I smiled, picking up the glass. Harrison is fine now. I paid enough for the name. Might as well use it. The press release went out an hour later. Harrison Industries acquired by Blake Technologies. Prodigal daughter returns as CEO. My phone exploded with messages from relatives who'd shunned me 8 years ago, now suddenly remembering their dear cousin Emma. I ignored them all. That evening, I moved into my father's old office, my office now. I had the dark wood paneling torn out, replaced with glass walls that let in light. The portraits of Harrison men came down, replaced with screens showing real-time market data. The company my grandfather built, my father stagnated, and my brother nearly destroyed was finally moving into the future, and I was the one dragging it there. Sometimes at night, I look out from my office window at the city below. I think about that day 8 years ago, when they thought they were punishing me by denying me my inheritance. They didn't realize they were just motivating me to take it by force. The nameplate on my desk reads Emma Harrison, CEO. Below it, I keep the words my father spoke 8 years ago. You'll never be worthy of this company. I proved him wrong in the most absolute way possible. I didn't just become worthy of his company, I became worthy enough to take it from him. The view from the top isn't about looking down on those who hurt you. It's about looking forward to where you're going to take the company they thought you'd never have. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't just success. It's success so complete that they have to read about it in the Wall Street Journal while clearing out their corner offices. The daughter they said would never be worthy now owns every share they ever had. That's not just revenge. That's evolution.
I lounged in my Manhattan penthouse office, watching my family's annual vacation planning unfold in the group chat. The same exclusive private island they'd been visiting for 15 years, the one I'd secretly purchased 6 months ago. Summer at Paradise Cove. My sister Emma posted. Can't wait to show off my new yacht. I smiled, minimizing the chat to check the latest reports from my property management team. Her impressive 40-foot yacht would look quite small next to the 120-foot vessel I'd recently acquired. Not that they'd ever seen it. Remember, my mother chimed in, members only. No outsiders. Sorry Rachel darling, but you know the rules. These luxury vacations require a certain financial status. If they only knew that every reservation, every amenity, every staff member now reported to me through my company Aurora Ventures. The financial status they thought I lacked had allowed me to buy not just Paradise Cove, but a string of exclusive properties across the globe. My phone rang. James Chin, Paradise Cove's general manager. Ms. Bennett, your family's annual booking is confirmed. Will you be using the owner's residence this time? I glanced at the security feed showing my newly renovated mansion overlooking the island's most pristine beach. No, James. They don't know I own the island yet. But I will be there. Of course, though your mother was quite insistent that non-members aren't allowed. Don't worry about that, I said, watching another message pop up from my sister. Emma, just paid the astronomical membership fee. So worth it to keep out the riffraff. Sorry Ratch, but your tech startup salary wouldn't cover a day here. I minimized my banking app, which showed the membership fee she was bragging about, a drop in the ocean compared to my latest acquisition's price tag. The tech startup they mocked was actually a billion-dollar investment firm specializing in luxury properties. Ms. Bennett, my assistant Sarah, appeared on the video screen. The board meeting for the Caribbean resort chain acquisition is in 10 minutes. Also, your family's specific villa requests have arrived. I pulled up the messages. My parents wanted the premium beachfront villa, the one directly below my owner's mansion. Emma demanded the exclusive marina slip for her yacht. My brother Tyler insisted on the private chef service. Approve all requests, I instructed, but keep my usual protocols in place. No one knows about the ownership change until I arrive. Another group message flashed. Mom, Rachel honey, perhaps next year you'll have a real career instead of that internet company. Then you can join us. I glanced around my actual office, the entire top floor of a building I owned in Manhattan, with its wall of screens monitoring my global property portfolio. The internet company they dismissed had just closed deals on 3 private islands larger than Paradise Cove. Sarah, I called, is everything ready for next week? Yes, Ms. Bennett. Your helicopter is scheduled, the staff has been briefed, and... She smiled slightly. Your family remains completely unaware that their exclusive paradise now belongs to their financially challenged daughter. I turned to the window, watching the sunset over the city skyline. Soon they'd learn exactly what my internet company had achieved. But first, let them enjoy their last vacation thinking they were the successful ones. 3 days before my family's arrival, I landed my private helicopter on Paradise Cove's helipad. From the owner's mansion, I had a perfect view of the staff preparing the island for the upcoming week. Ms. Bennett, James appeared with the morning briefing. Your sister's yacht has requested priority docking at the main marina. I checked the security feed showing Emma's boat approaching, the one she'd been bragging about for months. Let her have her moment. But keep my vessel out of sight for now. Of course, though she might notice it's the largest yacht in our waters. My phone lit up with the family chat. Emma, just passed through the Paradise Cove checkpoint. The staff was so impressed with my new boat. Tyler, can't wait to show everyone my new Porsche. They're delivering it to the island tomorrow. I glanced at my garage where my car collection sat quietly waiting. Tyler's Porsche would look rather modest next to them, but he didn't need to know that yet. Miss Bennett, Sarah called through the intercom, your mother has requested a meeting with the owner. She wants to discuss maintaining proper membership standards. Apparently she's concerned about less fortunate people trying to access the island. I couldn't help but laugh, considering I own not just the island but the exclusive membership club they were so proud of joining. Tell her the owner will meet with all members next week. She'll get her discussion about standards, just not the way she expects. Another message popped up. Mom, Rachel dear, saw your Instagram post about working remotely next week. Please don't tell me you're trying to crash our vacation again. This is a members-only island. I walked through my mansion, all 15,000 square feet of it, checking the preparations for my family's unwitting revelation. Every room featured subtle touches of my company's branding. The Aurora Ventures logo discreetly embedded in the decor, my initials tastefully incorporated into the design elements. James, I called, what's the status of the new signage? Ready to be unveiled at your signal. Though your sister nearly saw it during her marina tour, she was quite insistent about accessing the owner's private dock. I smiled, remembering Emma's previous attempts to network with the island's owner. And my brother's car delivery? Scheduled for tomorrow. He requested the premium parking spot, the one reserved for the owner. Let him have it for now, I said, watching the security feeds as more family members arrived. He'll understand why it's called the owner's spot soon enough. My phone buzzed again, a message from Tyler. Sis, heard you're trying to come to Paradise Cove. Don't embarrass us. This place is for people who've actually succeeded in life. I looked out over my island, my private paradise that they thought was the symbol of their success. Every villa, every amenity, every exclusive feature they bragged about was actually mine. Ms. Bennett, Sarah appeared with more updates. Your family's welcome dinner is arranged for tomorrow night. They've requested the main dining room. Book it, I replied, but prepare the owner's private dining room as well. I think it's time they learned what real success looks like. The evening of the welcome dinner arrived, and I watched from my private surveillance room as my family gathered in the main dining room. They were dressed in their finest, ready to impress the other elite members, none of whom realized the true owner was about to make her first public appearance. Miss Bennett, James appeared quietly, your sister is attempting to access the owner's private marina again. She seems quite determined to show off her yacht to the right people. I observed Emma on the security feed, arguing with the dock staff. Don't you know who I am? My family's been members here for 15 years. And your brother, James continued, is demanding to know why his Porsche was moved from the owner's parking space. Perfect timing, I smiled, adjusting my designer evening gown. Is everything ready for the revelation? Yes. The new signage is in place, covered until your signal. The staff is briefed and... He paused, suppressing a smile. Your mother is currently lecturing the membership director about maintaining exclusive standards. I checked my phone where the family group chat was buzzing. Emma, can't believe they won't let me park my yacht in the premium spot. Don't they know Daddy's been coming here forever? Tyler, some staff member had the nerve to move my Porsche. Said it was the owner's space. Like they own anything better than my car. Mom, just had a word with management about standards. Apparently, someone's been trying to sneak in, probably Rachel again. So embarrassing. I stood at my window watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors over my island. Below, I could see my family's boats, cars, and belongings, all carefully arranged to maximize their impending realization that everything they'd been bragging about was actually owned by the daughter they'd excluded. "Miss Bennet," Sarah called, "your entrance is prepared. Though your mother is still demanding to meet the owner to complain about maintaining the island's prestigious reputation." "Oh, she'll meet the owner all right," I replied, gathering the folders containing proof of my ownership, property deeds, acquisition documents, and the complete portfolio of Aurora Ventures holdings. At precisely 8 p.m., James entered the main dining room. I watched on the monitors as my family turned, expecting another fawning staff member. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "the owner of Paradise Cove would like to welcome you personally." Finally, my mother stood, clutching her complaint list. "We have serious concerns about maintaining standards." The room fell silent as I walked in, my evening gown worth more than Emma's yacht. Recognition dawned slowly on their faces, confusion turning to disbelief. "Rachel." Tyler choked on his champagne. "Actually," I said, taking my place at the head of the table, "it's Rachel Aurora Bennet, CEO of Aurora Ventures and owner of Paradise Cove Island Resort." Emma's wine glass slipped from her fingers as the hidden panels around the room slid away, revealing my company's logos and my initials that had been subtly present all along. "This is impossible," my mother whispered. "You run some little internet company." "I run a global luxury property investment firm," I corrected her, signaling for my team to distribute the portfolios. "Paradise Cove is just one of our recent acquisitions. Though I have to admit, buying my family's favorite vacation spot was particularly satisfying." James activated the displays around the room, showing aerial views of my other properties, private islands, exclusive resorts, and luxury developments that made Paradise Cove look modest in comparison. But your startup," Emma stuttered, "has a market cap larger than the GDP of several countries," I finished for her. "Those membership fees you've been bragging about? They wouldn't cover my daily coffee budget." Tyler stared at his car keys. "The owner's parking space is for my car collection, yes. Though your Porsche is lovely. It's similar to the one I learned to drive in years ago." The color drained from my mother's face as she flipped through the ownership documents. "All this time, every vacation, every amenity, was provided by your financially challenged daughter," I confirmed. "That premium villa you love so much? It's directly below my private mansion. The dock Emma's been trying to access? It's for my yacht. The exclusive membership club you've been using to keep me out? I own that too." James appeared with more documents. "Miss Bennet, the Caribbean acquisition is complete. Would you like to add it to the family vacation portfolio?" "Family vacation portfolio?" My father spoke for the first time. "Oh yes," I smiled, pulling up the maps. "Paradise Cove is just the beginning. I own private islands across the globe. Though this one's special, it's where my family taught me all about exclusive standards and proper financial status." Emma's phone buzzed, her social media post about her yacht automatically sharing to the family group. The same group where they'd been mocking my career for years. About those posts, I continued scrolling through their messages. "Sorry Rachel, but you can't afford our lifestyle. Members only, darling. When you get a real job." I gestured to the island around us. "I think we can agree I can afford it quite well." My mother reached for her complaint list about maintaining standards. "Rachel, Don't worry," I cut her off. "I take membership standards very seriously. In fact, I pressed a button illuminating the new island signage visible through the windows. I've already updated them." The covers fell away, revealing Aurora Ventures Presence Paradise Cove, a Rachel Bennet property, in elegant letters. "Your membership cards," I continued as my staff distributed new credentials bearing my company's logo. "You'll find they work at all Aurora Ventures properties. Though," I smiled, picking up my mother's earlier complaint, "we do maintain very strict standards about treating all guests with respect." The room was silent except for the gentle sound of waves outside, waves breaking on my private beach. "Now," I stood, smoothing my gown, "I have other business to attend to. Feel free to enjoy my island." "Oh, and Emma?" I pointed to the marina where my yacht was finally being unveiled. That's what a real boat looks like. The premium dock is reserved for vessels over 100 feet. Member rules, you understand. As I walked out, I heard Tyler whisper, "We've been vacationing on Rachel's Island.